If you find yourself angry, maybe you can relate. When I find myself angry, generally it's because there's a resentment lingering just beneath the surface. It doesn't always show up right away. Sometimes it's smoldering quietly for days, even weeks. But when I slow down enough to track it, I can almost always find the ember, and it's always about an unmet expectation. For me, resentment tends to come from moments where I feel misunderstood, dismissed, or unseen. It's when I expect something like connection or acknowledgement or appreciation, but it doesn't come. You see, expectations come from needs, and we all have needs. It's when we expect others to meet our needs and they don't. That's when resentment is born, because expectations are just that, resentments waiting to be born. But often, instead of naming my disappointment, I'll internalize it. I feel hurt, and that hurt then quickly becomes a story that, like, I don't matter, I'm not valued, that no one sees how hard I'm trying, and these stories sting, so I armor up. The anger arises not just because I'm purely mad, but because I'm trying to protect the part of me that feels small and rejected and afraid. And it's in that space that it's easy for me to become the victim. I tell myself things like, they should have known, or they'll never think about me, or I blame and I make myself the hero and them the villain. And once the story is ruminating in my brain, my behavior shifts and I withdraw. I get passive aggressive. Now, on the outside, I might act like I'm fine, but inside I'm seething. And sometimes I don't even notice I'm doing it until I catch the tone of my voice or the silence in the room. But here's what often happens next. The person that I'm directing that energy towards, whether it's my wife, a friend, or somebody I work with, they start to feel it too. Because now I'm not meeting their expectations either. I'm cold, I'm distant, maybe I'm even a little cruel. And then their pain surfaces, their resentment builds, and eventually their anger enters into the picture. And just like that, we're in a feedback loop of a cycle of distrust. One hurt bouncing off the other, one story colliding into the next. And before long, the space between us is so full of unsaid things, assumptions, projections, and old wounds that neither of us have healed. We no longer feel safe with each other, and the distance then just grows. When that pain gets too loud to ignore, one of two things happens. We either lash out or we shut down. We begin to interpret each other as a threat, not a partner, not an ally who have the same goals. And when this happens, the relationship erodes slowly, not always because of one big betrayal, but because of 1,000 little ones that never got named, that never got processed, that never got resolved. This is how many relationships slide from being connected into just coexistence. We stop engaging with each other from a place of curiosity and love, and we begin interacting from a place of fear, resentment, and survival. And when that happens, the relationship becomes something we tolerate rather than something we treasure. We settle into a pattern that feels safe, but it's dead. And all we have to do is interrupt the pattern. But if we don't have the tools, if we don't have the training, and if we don't have the courage to communicate, we're just going to settle into the old patterns. Here's the thing, communication is not easy, and naming our needs and sharing disappointments and revealing our emotional world requires vulnerability, and it requires trust. And it asks us to risk being misunderstood, to be rejected. And for most of us, especially men, we have years of relational history where we have been vulnerable and it hasn't gone so well. So instead, we rationalize our silence. We tell ourselves, it's not worth it. I don't want to start another fight. We've been taught not to come across as needy. And as a result, we hold it all in, we press it down, and the resentment grows and roots take hold and bitterness becomes an anchor. But what if there was a way to speak that invited connection rather than conflict? What if there was a pathway to help us step into hard conversations without blowing everything up or shutting down? What if there was a way to stay open even in the middle of our fear and pain? This is where the PEVF comes in: perception, emotion, vision, framework. The PEVP is simple. It's a structure that helps you communicate in ways that build trust instead of defensiveness. It's a tool for the moment when you're feeling hurt, but you don't want to make things worse by exploding or withdrawing. And it looks like this. It starts with perception, or I see. This is the observable reality. What happened without story or blame? You're naming the situation like a camera would record it. Here's an example. I see that we've barely talked since Tuesday night. The next is the emotion, or the I feel. The emotion is just truth, not what you think, not what you believe about them. It's just how you're feeling inside your body and heart. Here's an example. I feel lonely. I feel sad. And the next is the vision. This is the I imagine. This is where you speak to hope and your desire and your longing for something better. It's not a demand, it's a doorway. Here's an example. I imagine that if we carved out some time to connect, just you and me, we both might feel better. And this is the kind of communication that is powerful because it doesn't assume blame. Instead, it invites understanding. And most importantly, it gives the other person a way to step towards you rather than away from you. Because in the end, you're not trying to win. Your relationship is not a competition. You're trying to connect. And that brings me to the idea of a crucible. So a crucible is a vessel designed to withstand intense heat. And it's used to melt and refine metal. In the ancient world, it was where transformation happened. It's alchemy. The old cannot stay the same when it endures the heat, the fire, and the pressure. What comes out of the crucible becomes something stronger, something purer, something more whole. And that's what conflict can be when we handle it well. It becomes the crucible for connection, a container strong enough to hold pain, the pressure, and the discomfort. It becomes worth the process, so you see something deeper that can emerge on the other side, and that thing is connection. And when we step into the crucible together with honesty, humility, and shared commitment to growth, we become something new. We transform. And that, to me, is the sacred work of every relationship, because a good relationship is not one where conflict is absent. It's one that has the willingness to move through it with courage, compassion, and skill. And that starts with learning how to speak from the heart.